Pop Shield, a long-form discussion podcast about musical topics both past and present. I'm Gabe, and I'm joined as always by Dan.
Hello.
And Darren.
Hello.
You know, I like to start each episode by asking you guys if you've listened to anything interesting lately.
Yeah, I mean, you know the Warp took over the NTS radio was last weekend. So I listened to a ton of that, and that just got me right back hooked on Autechre, as always, and Boards of Canada. I really haven't listened to them in quite a while, so I was listening to that DJ mix they did, Societas or something, and then just running through the old discography.
Yeah, I was kind of doing the same, actually, because I love the new Warp sets by Autechre, and then I just noticed, it used to not be this way, but Tidal has added Boards of Canada's entire discography, so I actually ended up revisiting a lot of that as well. What about you, Darren?
Aside from the subject of today's episode, I was actually checking out that new Tom York record. Gave it a few spins this week, and I liked it. At first I didn't really like it. I'm not the biggest fan of the Eraser, but it grew on me. The second half of the record, actually, I was pleasantly surprised by.
Yeah, we were kind of discussing, me and Dan, that he sounds like actually a competent electronic music producer for the first time, almost.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say, yeah.
Yeah, well, I wanted to shout out Freddie Gibbs and Madlib's Bandana, which I'm really, really digging. In my opinion, let's say, maybe some people will be mad about this, I think the production is not quite as strong, still good, but not quite as strong as on their previous album together, Pinata. But Freddie Gibbs has really stepped his game up to the point where he's, really upstaging, in my opinion, some of the guest artists here, which include Pusha T, Mos Def, Black Thought, and that is no small feat. Also, he's from Gary, Indiana, and he raps on one song about surviving the whole summer with no air conditioning. And I am in Indiana and currently sweating my ass off with no air conditioning. So I really, really felt that.
Very relatable.
Yeah. All right, but let's go ahead and jump into today's topic. A couple weeks ago marked the 30th anniversary of Nirvana's debut album, Bleach. And while the band wouldn't radically transform both music and popular culture until the release of their sophomore LP, of course, 1991's Nevermind, Bleach's arrival feels, in hindsight, like a momentous event worth celebrating. Indeed, critic Andy Beta marked the occasion by ranking every Nirvana song for Vulture.com. And while we are all eager to discuss that list, we got even more excited about preparing and inevitably arguing about our own top 10s. Now, I want to get right into our list, which we haven't actually shared with each other yet. But first, I think we should review both our past and present levels of Nirvana fandom. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, as any good teenager of our age, I, was obsessed with Nirvana. It was, one of the first, real bands I got into, and I just loved them and loved everything about them. I still have my copy of Kurt Cobain's journals that I bought the day it came out. I looked it up 17 years ago. I've had that.
Wow.
just absolutely was obsessed with them. Found many a great band through them. In my older age, they sort of feel like what I imagine, if you grew up with Led Zeppelin or something, they must feel, they're sort of that band to people my age, I think. I still enjoy them, but I don't regularly listen to them. But, I throw a record on here and there. I like to play the drums along the Bleach, do that every now and then. But, I'm not as obsessed as I once was.
Yeah, it's difficult for me to articulate the impact that Nirvana had on me. I thought about this for basically the entire time we've been listening. Talk about a life-changing band, a band that really sort of shifts your direction, your path in life, and I think Nirvana did that for me, in terms of just trying to emulate Kurt Cobain, whatever I thought Kurt Cobain was, you know what I mean? Growing my hair out, starting a band, playing nothing but Nirvana songs. I mean, I learned guitar because of Nirvana. You remember this, Gabe? I have a binder full of guitar tabs of Nirvana songs. You know what I mean? I was living and breathing them, posters on the wall, you name it. There was nothing else out there for a few years of my life, you know what I mean? And you kind of move on, and I think that's the natural thing. You kind of progress and find other bands, of course, like Dan, you mentioned, Kurt, certainly introduces you to other bands if you read into his interviews or his journals.
Right.
But, looking back, I still, I love Nirvana, I'm obviously not, I don't have long hair and wearing, ripped jeans and flannel right now anymore, but that doesn't mean I don't, I hate the music or anything. I still love the music, but it's not something I'm like regularly listening to.
Yeah, I was equally obsessed, and in fact, we were, I was with you covering all those Nirvana songs for all those many hours learning.
That's how we
every
met,
single
really,
song.
right? I mean,
yeah, it really is.
I remember the day you came over.
Right, and in a way, it's like I would consider Nirvana almost my first favorite band. To where I liked bands before that, but I never got so fully obsessed with like the mythology and the story. I'm like reading books and everything. I was just. Yeah. New to me, and like you guys said, it sent me in so many different directions. I think we'll return to that topic, but in the years since, I really have had a hard time listening to Nirvana, returning to Nirvana. Even when years ago these deluxe editions would come out and they would be remastered versions of their albums, and I would be kind of excited and intrigued by revisiting and just like put it on and just kind of not even finish it because it's just I've over listened so much. So then this week where we were kind of preparing to do this was like the first real time in a very long time that I just sort of forced myself to like try to get back into it, and we can kind of talk about how well that went. But I think we should jump into the lists. So we'll count it from 10 all the way to 1 for each of us. Dan, what was your number 10 favorite or best Nirvana song?
Yeah, for number 10, I went "Smells Like Teen Spirit." I thought we'd all be too cool. Nobody wants to put it on the list. And yeah, I mean, that song is like overplayed. There's nothing new to discover in it anymore. But you gotta admit, I mean, it is like a fantastic song as a pop song, and I mean, it completely like changes the course of musical history. So you can't overstate like the importance of this song. So I'm gonna say I'm not too cool. I'm gonna throw it on there at number 10. I'm too cool to put it at 1.
Right.
But
how do you feel about that pick, Darren?
It's a good pick. It's on my list.
Oh, okay.
It's fairly close to that pick, so I guess I'll talk about it a little bit too. Like you mentioned, it changed the course of music. This is the song that changed the course of my life. This was the song that got me into Nirvana. And coming back, listening literally to their entire catalog, B-sides, live songs, everything, Smells Like Teen Spirit is a great song. Like, just incredibly written. Like, Kurt is... he didn't even seem to realize how incredible the song was when it first came out. They all thought In Bloom was going to be the song that was going to change everything. But no, I mean, just those chords, like the way the song like kicks in, the lyrics, like, that kind of like capture the whole mood of the generation, even though Kurt clearly wasn't, he didn't want to be that person that was doing that. But like the lyrics that come to mind are like, here we are now, entertain us. And you think about 90s teenagers or teenagers in our own generation, like that is exactly kind of like where we were. And it's just such a perfect song, perfect timing, and it feels like it works not just in the 90s. It doesn't matter, like every generation it will come back to this song.
It's like perfectly timeless.
Yeah.
See, I'll admit it did not make my list.
Too cool.
Fair. That's fair.
I know. Little embarrassed, but my issue is like I can distinctly remember the absolute rush that hearing that song gave me. I mean, this is a long time ago. I was actually like trying to search my memories for when I even discovered Nirvana. But it must have been in like the Kaza days or Kaza, however you want to pronounce that, this file sharing stuff. And just that seemed to be a popular song commonly uploaded. So I downloaded it and it just like blew my head off. I just couldn't get enough of it. And well into my sort of teenage life, it would still just do that for me every time. And now it just doesn't. It's like I cannot find that feeling, like, what I'm trying to describe, that like surge of energy that song gives you. I don't have it. Do you guys?
I mean, I don't have it anymore because I've heard that song 8 billion times. I work in radio, so I probably have heard this song every day for like
Punished.
31 years. So it's anything. Your favorite movie. If you see it every day for like your entire life, you're not gonna have that rush anymore. So no, I don't have that rush. But it's not the song's fault. It's the oversaturation's fault.
I think what kind of got me, feeling that surging, because I totally get what you're saying, Gabe, but like listening to some of these live albums, and I'm going to probably come back to this a few times when I talk about some of these tracks, and just the energy that, this song in particular, along with others, just kind of like erupts, you know what I mean? Like it just kind of explodes way more than like even the studio version of it, you know what I mean? And I can like, the energy just gets me every time, you know what I mean? Like it's just such a incredible song. You just cannot help but like bang your head to it.
Right.
I don't know.
Now, and I can remember like the first time that I like heard this song. I was like a little kid, and I remember we were out trick-or-treating, and my dad would follow us in his car. And I remember like getting in, and it was like just playing on the local rock station, and I was like, man, that is that's a banging track. And then
right.
And then I my mom was like, she always had these it was like the CD thing where it was like Publishers Clearinghouse or something, where you like would order you would get like 10 CDs a month or something. And so she would let me get like 1 or 2 each time. And I got Nevermind because I heard that song on the radio at probably 8 or 9 or something. And I didn't really get into Nirvana yet. I just pretty much would listen to that song on the CD, but eventually I did.
Conveniently the first track.
No, exactly. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we will have more to say about that a little later when we get to the Vulture list. But Darren, what is your number 10 Nirvana song?
Number 10 for me, this might surprise you, it's Radio Friendly Unit Shifter from In Utero.
All right.
Oh, okay.
So, and I will be honest, like when I was listening to this record back in the day, I wasn't a big fan of the song. It was one I would often kind of like skip over, you know what I mean? I'm not going to lie. But the song actually grew on me over the years. Like, In Utero is my favorite Nirvana record. I'll just be upfront about that.
Me too, yeah.
And coming back to the record over the years, this song just stood out to me. And here's the reason why I put it on my top 10 list. It kind of combines like some of the best parts about Nirvana's tendency to create feedback, a lot of noise, endless nameless, but
right.
To kind of like encapsulate that into like an actual song with a great beat, a great chorus, if you will, and I think it changes. Nirvana's notorious for like being that sort of like like soft loud
right.
kind of thing. This song is like different than that. It's noisy, the verses are noisy, and then he kind of just jumps into this like really exhilarating bridge, chorus, whatever you want to call it. And I don't know, I just love it, and I still love it. It's great. It sounds great live on that. I was listening to the Super Deluxe In Utero, and they did that live and loud. Oh my god, this song starts the show, and it really made me feel like if there was anything I could like, if there was any show I could go back to or see somebody live, Nirvana might be one of those bands,
Yeah, I mean, it didn't make my list, but I will have a lot to say about In Utero and the way that Nirvana incorporates like feedback and pure noise, and particularly the way that on In Utero they are really, almost hostile, like we were saying a few episodes ago, hostile toward their fans. Or maybe that was just last episode. Really like aggressively trying to shed their image as like the voice of a generation and everything, and doing it by just punishing the casual listener. That was something that appealed to me a great deal back in that time. Did this make your list, Dan?
No, but it came very, very close. Like as I was culling down a list, I made like a Spotify playlist and just kept culling it down, and that one was basically made it to the last round. Like it's number 11, I think.
Okay,
like
nice.
It came very close. It's an excellent track, and there's I'll talk a little bit more about sort of the reason I didn't put it on with another track coming up here.
Okay,
but yeah, it's a fantastic song.
All right. Well, I'll jump into my number 10, which is Dumb. Did that make either of yours guys' lists?
No, it did not.
It did not make my list, no.
Wow. Well, I think this is just kind of an amazing like distillation of Kurt's songcraft. It's like this gorgeous little pop song, very much in line with kind of a John Lennon type of songwriting, I think. And it also kind of looks ahead to stuff that I would get really into later in a way I didn't even appreciate at the time. But now it really strikes me as almost like a proto Elliott Smith song or something. It's got that kind of like indie energy where it's so stupidly simple that, you know, you just feel like I could have done this. You know, I could do this. And yet the arrangement is like so elevated with the use of the cello and the, you know, the like high harmony that kind of keeps repeating on like dumb at the end. And it creates like this kind of amazing dreamy vibe. I always think of this in the same like ballpark as Lennon's "I'm Only Sleeping" or the Beatles' "I'm Only Sleeping" rather. It's got this kind of dreamy, like drunken feel to it, and yet it's more like I'm strung out on heroin rather than having a cool dream. But you know, it reminds me of like "On the Beach," that kind of vibe where it's like it's just so like weird and woozy and kind of out of it. Do you guys at least really like this song?
Yeah, I like it. It does like remind me of "On the Beach." You know, I like the haziness, the weariness in it. You know, it's one of the sweeter sort of Nirvana songs and all. Not one of my favorites though, but I do appreciate it. I think the unplugged version's better than the studio.
Interesting.
I think I disagree, but I do love that song a lot. It wasn't really close to making my list, but I agree with you, Gabe. And I you know, it kind of gives a little bit of a hint at what Kurt might have done, you know, had he lived. You know what I mean? It would have been really interesting to see more tracks kind of built around, you know, a bit of a softer approach and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I like it a lot.
Yeah, and it's something I want to return to pretty often, which is like this interesting way that, you know, he sort of commented on this song being about kind of like mindless idiots in the world who are just like watching, you know, TV and are just like really stupid but happy anyway or something. But there's always like a level of self-deprecation in these kind of songs. Like sometimes Kurt is very hostile and very critical of like the world and his listeners even, and yet it always seems to like kind of point back at himself in an interesting way where he's like sort of with this song, he's like almost acknowledging like he's dumb entertainment as well. This is something I think pops up a lot. But let's move on to your number 9, Dan.
Yeah, number 9 for me, I got Downer, which is...
Wow.
Which I just learned when you told me like 2 days ago or so that it's actually a bonus track on Bleach. My whole life, I've always just had it on Bleach. I never knew that.
And we should explain that it's because Sub Pop actually re-released, after Nirvana got famous, they re-released Bleach with 2 bonus tracks. So really, literally everyone in the world heard the, you know, 13-track version or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And the song ends up on Incesticide as well, right?
Yeah,
I always
correct,
wondered why it was there now.
Yeah, I did.
Makes more sense.
I did too. I always like. I'm not sure if it's the same recording or not, but it doesn't matter. But yeah, I picked this track. I read a quote like from Kurt. He said that Nirvana is Black Sabbath playing the Knack, which I think is like a cool idea. And I think this song like sort of showcases it. You know, it's like really like the guitar is really doomy. I assume it's down tuned. I don't play guitar well. But in the core of it, it's still like a punk rock song it's playing.
Right.
The lyrics and everything, you know, are classic Cobain. I think this is just like an excellent showcase of the early sound. This song even predates Nirvana. It's actually like on the Fecal Matter demo tape and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's really impressive to see like from. I mean, he must have been like 18 or something, like when he first, you know, recorded this song. It's just impressive to see that, like, he sort of always had it. You know, it's not like he, had to work. You know, it's like he's almost fully formed, like from the offset, which is very impressive.
Well, Dan's for super edgy.
Yeah, I'll say Bleach is my favorite Nirvana record.
See, I'll have maybe more to say about that later, but I feel that Bleach has such a cool vibe that has aged really well. I do want to return to that, but it doesn't have a lot of like super highlight songs. Maybe that's something that we'll all have more to say.
We'll disagree on that. Yeah.
But Darren, what is your number 9 Nirvana song?
Number 9 for me is Sliver.
Okay.
All right.
Didn't make my list.
I'll say that's my next song. So.
Okay.
Oh.
So, I really wanted a song and I felt like this was the best candidate for it that kind of represents a bit of the goofier side of Kurt. You know what I mean? I'm thinking of songs like, Beeswax, Aero Zeppelin, all those tracks like Incesticide that are just full of like really ridiculous lyrics and stuff. And this one just seems like a much, it has some darkness to it, obviously, but it is still like lighter, in terms of like the theme, talking about, being at grandma's and all this kind of stuff, and like kind of going through like everyday sort of like kid stuff, you know what I mean, or like being miserable, right?
Yeah.
And then, musically, I think that this is like a really cool track. It's only like 2 minutes, like it gets right to the point. It's great live, a lot of fun, and I feel like, Kurt was so good about thinking about, how would his songs translate in like the live realm, you know what I mean? And I think that's why you see some of these early tracks like Sliver show up on the In Utero tour. You know what I mean? Like they were always great crowd pleasers, and this is one of them for me.
Yeah, why did it make your list, Dan?
Yeah, this is my number 8, and for a lot of the same reasons Darren just said. I Cobain, he always gets like the dark, edgy, thing, but there's some silly, goofy songs, and but they're fun, and this is one of them. It's just this banal story of like being dropped off at your grandparents' house while your parents go, and I think they're going to a show in the story, and it's like something that like I feel like just everybody sort of has had that experience where you you do that and you don't want to, even if you like your grandparents, you just like want to be at your house, and it's just like a funny story, and it's a good song musically. I love the bass line in it is really pronounced, and it just great. It's a great live track, like Darren said. It's I think it's their second single ever. And I mean, it makes it all the way to their final tour, and there's inside this banal story and everything. There's like still like this melancholy, like in the silliness, with him, talking about I want to be alone and all that stuff, which is that like teenage, or this is even pre-teenage, like sort of angst, right. That like I don't know. It's just really interesting.
Yeah, it didn't make my list, and I will admit, actually, that it's kind of always been a song that annoys me a little bit. I find it kind of repetitive, and in my opinion, it's not something I realized. Yeah. It's not something I realized back then, but Nirvana comes out of this alternative 80s rock world, and then they like completely transcend it. I used to kind of think that Nirvana just kind of popularized the stuff that the Pixies were doing or that Sonic Youth was doing, but I really feel now that they do something new. Like they really bring something new. But there are these songs like Sliver, which are just, if this was all Nirvana was, they would be another one of these gem 80s bands like The Replacements or 80s REM or like the Vaselines, who they like to cover so much, they would really fit right in that, but they outgrew it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. If this was the end of Nirvana, this is the height that they ever reached. Yeah, they would just be one of those sort of hidden gem bands. They wouldn't have, changed the world or anything. Right. But, not everybody has to change the world. It's still a great song.
Yeah, I do appreciate like the fun that they're having. I do think that's a really underrated part of Nirvana. My number 9 is not fun at all. It's Milk It from In Utero.
Nice.
This is a weird song. I mean, I just feel like it is so dark, and it's like this amazing, I mean, just almost the perfect example of Steve Albini's production with like these heavy thudding drums that you can really hear the room they're in, and it creates all this sort of empty space with these, especially like with the clean, just completely off-key guitar, which is like played very quietly, and it's like that contrast of this like really lightly played guitar with these just booming drums in an empty room. It creates like the most interesting kind of soundscape. I think that this week I really began to appreciate Nirvana's arrangement abilities, and they're always doing it with like 3 people. I mean, there's actually an overdubbed of one of those like clean guitars comes in later on in the quote unquote solo section, but it's just 3 people, and it just creates like this huge, just foreboding feeling in this song. I also think that it's almost like a comic exaggeration of the soft, loud dynamic that you were talking about. Yes. I feel like in a lot of these, I don't know, a lot of these songs, he is like mocking the thing he set out to do. This is like something I want to return to, like just the idea of radio-friendly unit shifter. He's like writing like just a banging hook on that song, and yet he's like mocking the idea of doing it. You get that sense?
Right, like there's no way he sat at a guitar and wrote like this verse with like feedback. He was like, yeah, I'm just gonna play some feedback and write this verse. No, like that was a legitimate decision. Like no, he wanted to turn something on its head, or not just have the bass running through the verse. He wanted to do something else. You know what I mean? Like I think that Kurt was always searching for ways to change up the formula, and then of course you look at like some of the B-side tracks like verse, chorus, verse, where he's acknowledging the fact that people realize that a lot of their songs are very formulaic. Milk It, I freaking I love that song so much. I really do, and I really wanted to put it on this list, and it's like literally number 11 for me. I've always loved that track a lot, and I feel like we haven't said anything yet about Dave Grohl's like thunderous drums just on so many tracks. And again, I keep talking about live, but man, like he is incredible. He's just really such a key component of the band. And I guess when you talk about like just 3 people putting this music out there, like every person in that trio like counts, like what I mean? Like, you pay such close attention to each one of them, and they all 3, even Chris Novoselic brings it, and this song is a great example of that.
I was expecting this to make your list, Dan. Am I wrong?
It was really close. Like I talked about with the play, this made the last round. It's if radio friendly unit shifter was 11, this is probably 12. I got really close. I do love this song. It's just nuts. That Albini production, great. I got some other In Utero stuff on here that I think, I just edged it out a little bit.
Yeah, and something I think we'll return to pretty often is another thing I love about this song is this like conflation of his life with his musical career, which is something he was so prone to doing. But it just feels like this song, thematically, it's kind of mixing, the lyrics, like almost suicidal, self-destructive thoughts with kind of like a relationship that is probably like toxic in a dependency kind of way, and it manifests itself in the music, which is also destructive. It's like actually destructive to his career to put out a song like this, on the follow-up to Nevermind. I mean, the way those things intersect, which will come up again and again on my list at least, is really fascinating. But number 8, Dan, you already said it, which was
Sliver.
Number 8 for you, Darren, is what?
Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Okay, nice. All right. So we covered that one too. Back to me already. Number 8, Man Who Sold the World. Did this make either of your lists?
Again, that's another close one. And
wow, you didn't include Bowie on the list? I am shocked.
No, I got something else from Unplugged on there that just sort of edges it out. But yeah, I mean, I love this song. This song is how I discovered David Bowie. Because they used to play this song on the radio, the Nirvana version on the radio a lot, and I loved it. And in the Kazaa Napster days, any of these Nirvana songs that were covers, I would always get the original, and so I got Man Who Sold the World, fell in love with Bowie, and have gradually gotten more and more into him ever since. So yeah, I love it. The one thing that's annoying is, it's unplugged, but this is very clearly not an acoustic guitar.
But I gotta say, my favorite part of the song is when he like completely flubs the beginning of the solo. Like he misses the note like almost 3 times before he like, it's like, and then he finds it. It's like magnificent. Did this make your list, Darren?
It did not. It was very close. It was very close. I thought for sure both of you would have it on there, and then you guys would ridicule me because it's a Bowie cover. But it was real close, just like Bowie was in that top albums.
Oh yeah, let's not get back into that. Yeah. To me, this is the definitive version of this song. I think that Bowie's version feels, and I'm totally biased because I came to Bowie's version long after I already had listened to this one a million times, but it feels like undercooked to me. Like it's not.
I completely agree.
The essence of the song has not been discovered yet until this unplugged performance, and he just nails it. And it's amazing because the song, like thematically, seems to have something to do with like selling out or something, like losing yourself in some sort of transaction or something and trying to save face. And it feels so relevant to what Kurt is dealing with that I feel like that's why he's able to so fully inhabit this song. But it just strikes me as like, it's like Dan will hate this, but like All Along the Watchtower, how Jimi Hendrix has really the definitive version of that Dylan song. This is that to me. And I also had an epiphany this week where I think that Nirvana, Kurt especially, like taught me how to listen to music. Because like you were saying, Dan, I mean, when I heard this, I had to check out Bowie. And that led me, to T-Rex. That led me to Lou Reed. Like when I'm listening to Nirvana and he's so outspoken about his influences, he covers things, he brings like guests up. I have to check out, the Meat Puppets. I have to check out Sonic Youth. I got to hear Neil Young. Like this is how today, like to this day, I listen to music in this way, where if I love something, I want to know what makes them tick. And I just follow the trail backwards. Like that was actually, I never realized until this week, that was very important to my young music fan life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's so many bands that are currently favorites of mine that I found from either reading Kurt talk about them or hearing Kurt, cover them or whatnot, or just finding them through the chain or Nirvana. Like, I feel like so much of what I like, if you made a big family tree, Kurt is the great grandfather.
7 degrees of separation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that he deliberately says this is a David Bowie song.
Right. Yeah, he never like tries to hide it or anything.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of bands that cover other artists, and they don't say a word.
No, exactly, because it's almost because a lot of times it's. It's almost like a little shameful to cover something, and so you sort of bury it as much as you can, or it's just an album B-side or something. But yeah,
and not all bands are like this willing to expose themselves. Like Kurt will just say, "Smells Like Teen Spirit." I was trying to rip off the Pixies.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And that sends me to the Pixies, and like I kind of love him for it. And you could, if like your favorite band was Radiohead, you could listen to them all your life, and they never really talk about their influences. Like you have to kind of figure it out for yourself. Kurt is just like telling you, and that's really helpful for a young music fan, I think. But okay, we're on to number 7. Dan, what is your number 7 Nirvana song?
My number 7, it comes from Nevermind. It's Territorial Pissings.
Okay.
This is the one song on Nevermind that like still has that sort of noise rock edge.
Yes.
Old Butch Vig couldn't blunt the edge on this one. I mean, this song almost like belongs on In Utero a little more than Nevermind. I love Kurt's vocals. How he's like ends with him like screaming and he's like losing his voice. It's just like this is a kick-ass rockin' song.
Did that make your list, Darren?
It did not make my list. It's probably one of my least favorites.
Wow.
Damn. Never mind. Yeah.
Pleb very confirmed.
It's actually, for me, this is one of my like maybe 11 or 12 songs. It's it just really strikes me as like, and I was thinking about this in terms of Milk It as well, and a lot of songs, to be honest, where you get the sense that Kurt is just like giving it his complete, just his all. I mean, he is like literally destroying his voice. And again, I'm constantly amazed by this, and I think this is what was like so intoxicating for me, is like he is so authentic in a way. Like he is just really giving it to you, and so there's something like self-destructive about the way he sings this song, like literally in a sense of his vocals, which is, you know, like mirrored in his real life, the way he lives his life. You know, it's you hear this and you're like thinking, I mean, now I'm thinking, dude, like if you want to be, you know, like Eric Clapton or something and be rocking into your 60s, like it's not going to happen, dude, because you got to stop singing like this. Like you can't sustain this. And it's almost like he just didn't give a fuck, you know? That was never in the cards. I think that's incredibly inspiring.
Oh yeah, and I mean you hear that in the live albums too. Like what live albums that have, you know, officially been released. I mean, listen to how Kurt is singing. Like he is giving it his all, you know, and this is on a tour, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's not like
night after night.
It's not like and it's not like a, you know, Bob Dylan sort of deal where it was like all planned out. Here's what we're gonna do, this show kind of thing. No, like he's just getting up there and, you know, kicking. He doesn't even say much to the crowd during most of these shows. You know what I mean? He's just going all out, you know, every time it seems like.
Yeah, always giving it his all. All right, your number 7, Darren.
My number 7 is also from Nevermind. It's Breed.
Okay,
all right.
Interesting pick.
This comes up on mine soon.
Oh, okay. Very cool. Yeah, so this is one of my favorite tracks on Nevermind. It's, again, kind of different from the soft, loud, soft because it's just loud the entire time.
Right.
You know, and it's one of those, it's actually kind of a rare thing where, at least in the Nevermind and in Utero, between those two albums, for one of their songs to just be pure rockin', like high octane, you know, hitting the ground at 150 miles an hour and not stopping. You know what I mean?
True.
And incredibly catchy, just blistering energy throughout, and one of my favorites live. It was one of my favorites to play on the guitar back in the day. I mean, it's just still a great song.
Yeah, this I guess I'll save the number, but it's coming. It's coming soon. But yeah, I like it for, again, a lot of the same reasons as Darren said. I think this is a good example. You know, the mixing and production of Nevermind gets a bad rap most of the time, justifiably so. I think here, though, this is like a good example of, like, this is a great like headphone song.
It is.
I really like the guitar is like completely or almost completely in the right channel, and then there's like that really awesome like fuzz bass in the left. I love that mixing. And then when the solo comes, how it like the guitar switches and sort of goes back and forth, it like it's like a little dizzying and everything. You know, that
100% stole that idea when we were recording songs and stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm sure you and 8 billion other people like have stole that idea. You know, and it's a great idea to steal. You know, so like it is nice that like Nevermind really does like at times have some good production. You know, it has its flaws. It has its, you know, overproduction, but here is like where, you know, this is like a good example of like essentially an indie band getting a major budget. You know, you get to do stuff like that, and it's used well as a great track.
Yeah, it didn't make my list, but it was in the running. I do think that it is kind of like the perfect album track, you know, because Nevermind is a weird album in the sense that you get like 3 of the biggest singles of the entire decade right in a row. Mm-hmm. And then it just feels so necessary that you like, you know, just blaze through with a completely wild just album track. Like it's not a single and it's not designed to be a single, but it like keeps the energy going. It's the perfect transition into the other big single, Lithium. But yeah, I mean, really inspiring to me, the guitar solo, which is, you know, I was sort of amazed this week where I was really like, wow, these are some formulaic songs. And I feel like Kurt is always kind of asking himself, like, what could I do instead of a solo? You know, like I've done maybe too many, like every bridge of every song. And so then he just, you know, so then it's like every once in a while you get these neat little things that are like, you know, Chris Novoselic does a little bass solo, like, hey, that's kind of rare and cool in the canon. Or like here, instead of like any kind of soloing, it's just like shredding, you know, like, you know, I don't even know what to play it, but just playing, you know, hitting like high chords as fast as possible.
Right.
But really adds, it's like a rush that the song needs. I'll get into my number 7, which I'm going to be very surprised if it's not on either of your lists. Heart-Shaped Box.
It's not on mine.
Wow.
Oh, it is definitely on mine, but like later.
Yeah, this is another one where I kind of feel that the rush that it used to give me, similar to Smells Like Teen Spirit, I no longer feel. But I think it holds up better than Smells Like Teen Spirit because it's a really wild song. I mean, I think similar to Teen Spirit, it's got this like lumbering kind of quality. It's not like Breed, which is just like this rush of energy. This is like heavy thudding, plodding. And I know that like with Teen Spirit, they kind of often amp up the speed when they play that. But the studio track is like 5 minutes long, and it's just this juggernaut of heavy sound. I mean, Heart-Shaped Box kind of works in just the same way. It's also quite long, but I'm really in love with the whole thing feels like almost out of tune, because like these sort of, dun 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 dun, like it feels just like kind of bendy and drunk again, kind of like Dumb does to me. And then the way the whole chorus is like actually built on bending notes, the whole thing is just like really strange and like wobbly. And, it just is really perfect for the for the topic of the song, which is basically the most fucked up love song ever written. Just the lyrics, like, what is it? I wish I could eat your cancer when you turn black. Like, what a way to
Throw
say
down
I
your
love you.
Cord.
Yeah. I mean, I just feel like theme and sound is just stunning. You're kind of with me on this, Darren?
Oh, yeah. And, I don't want to get too much into it, but, what a weird chorus, right? I mean, It's just such a strange chorus, but, I'll save most of my thoughts for a bit later. But, yeah, great track.
Okay, but you love it, right, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, of course. I honestly, I don't know if there's any Nirvana song, besides like Marigold that I would say sucks.
Wow.
Wow.
Dave Grohl shot.
Take that, Dave Grohl. Yeah.
Chad Channing for life.
Oh boy.
But no, this is a great song. It made at least a few rounds of the list. It just did. I ultimately couldn't pull it out. But the chorus you guys talked about. I think it's like sort of and maybe it's just because we're so far removed from it, but like it's almost like parody, like it's almost like if you were gonna make something making fun of Nirvana, like that's sort of the kind of lyrics you would use. And maybe it's just because like I think of that song when I think of that, but
maybe.
It's just like it's great. I don't get me wrong. Nobody send me an email. I love the song. I just think it has its flaws. It's definitely one of the like better singles. One of the ones I can still stomach a little more, maybe because I hear it less than others. But it just ultimately couldn't pull it out on my list.
All right. Well, we are at your number 6, Dan.
Yeah, number 6 from In Utero, Tourette's. This is the song I was sort of referring to when it sort of knocked off Radio Friendly Unit Shifter
off the rails completely,
and Milk It too. People always credit like Radio Friendly as like the fuck you to the label, but like just imagine being like some 50-year-old suit, at Geffen Records, and then you're like, the new Nirvana. Let's see what the kids are into, and then this fucking song playing. I would have been so angry if I was that guy. But that's exactly what Kurt wanted, and this is just like a fantastic noise rock song. Like if this was a Big Black song, it would be the best Big Black track you've ever heard, and it's like it sort of is like a like a throwaway, it's like really just Kurt saying fuck you to the suits, but like
moderate rock.
I love that. It's just like there's so much of that like attitude and I kind of hate the term, but the punk rock ness of Nirvana is like 100% in this track. I mean, who else? Only somebody who just released Nevermind, which goes, platinum over platinum, could turn in Tourette's and it make the record.
Yeah, it's very, very brave. I'm guessing it didn't make your list, Darren, but you have anything to say about it?
No, I mean, it's a great track. It's very abrasive. It's quick, you know what I mean? So It's not one of my favorites, but
it's kind of like the territorial pissings of this record.
Yeah. That's
but
exactly
it's territorial pissings turn to 11. It sort of makes that sound like Polly almost.
Okay. All right. What is your number 6 track, Darren?
My number 6 is Aneurysm.
Mine too.
Whoa! Wow! Look at that.
So I made a Spotify playlist similar to Dan. Thank you, Dan, for that.
You're welcome.
And my version of Aneurysm that I picked is actually a live version from the Paramount record.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to tell you why, because I just feel like the two studio versions just don't capture the sort of like unhinged energy that's
fair
that they play when they do it live. And it's not just this one. Actually, the first time I really fell in love with this track was from the Muddy Banks of Wishcock. That was like the only live album back in our day, right?
Yeah.
And I loved it then. I already loved it more than the studio album. So coming to this live album, which sounds so much better than the Muddy Banks,
right?
I just absolutely love the song. I mean, I'm actually surprised. I see a lot of people talking about it being like the best Nirvana song, and I think it's totally a fair assessment. But to me, it's really the live version that makes it one of the best.
Yeah, it's another amazing mixture of topic and sound. And the Vulture article, Andy Beta's article, I don't want to like totally rip off his points, but he kind of mentions that the song could either be about like shooting up heroin or being madly in love with someone. I always think it's interesting how Kurt is just really into writing like really kind of pure love songs. He does them in his own twisted way, as we talked about on Heart Shaped Box, but he's often just like madly in love or something. And I mean, even Tourette's is kind of like a love song in a weird way. And, this song more than any just kind of like captures the joy of that, but also the like nervousness, like, of maybe falling in love that intensely or something, because, that high note that builds up, it makes me very anxious. It's like very unnerving and yet completely exhilarating. And the whole song is just like it's like a pure sugar rush or something, in the sense of, like do the twist and, the ooze and the, beat it. It's like really self-consciously a fun as fuck pop song.
Yeah, it like really like when you listen to it, it like weirdly has like a saccharine sheen to it, Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a great song. It didn't make my list. I do kind of wonder like why, like this is just like a recorded at the BBC, I think, right? It's kind of weird that it never like made a proper record or anything.
It is kind of weird, but I feel like it must have been like one of the big selling points of Incesticide, like a new song of the quality of Nevermind, basically.
Well, they first recorded it in 91, I think, right? Before, I don't know if it was for Nevermind, but like one of those first sessions was like in January, and then they did it again at the end of that year.
Yeah, the Incesticide version is at the BBC. I don't know if there was another recorded, but yeah, the one everybody knows is...
Yeah, well, ended up basically a B-side, but it is one of those things where if you want to be, you'll like the vibe of Nevermind, you're not totally into the like abrasiveness of In Utero, but you're not a mainstream, Chad, so you pick Aneurysm as your favorite song. That's basically...
That's a perfect description of it, yeah.
I think it's also fair to mention here that like, we're putting a B-side on our list, and that just goes to show, how great, how deep Nirvana's catalog goes beyond the albums. I mean, I don't have any other B-sides on my list, but there were definitely some that I was like, enjoying listening to.
Yeah,
again.
I did realize that this list for me, I actually want to return to this, but a little bit of a fool's errand, because part of what makes Nirvana so great is the wealth of hidden gems in their discography. That's sure. Come for the hits, stay for the weird B-sides, basically. Exactly. All right, your number 5, Dan.
Yeah, my number 5 is from In Utero, and it's Very Ape. And something you just... Wow.
You got a wild list, man. You got a wild list here. Was that just in a row? Territorial Pissings, Tourette's, and Very
exactly.
Ape.
I don't even. I'm so
turn it up to 11, man. The whole time.
Yeah,
I'm so patrician. I don't even get what you're making fun of me for. But no, I think what you just said. Aneurysm is like, you like the style of Nevermind, but you're not a Chad. This is very ape is you're whatever the opposite of a Chad is. You're so patrician.
Yeah.
No, I think this is it's a sort of like the perfect mix of the pre Nevermind Bleach era Nirvana, but with a little bit of the sensibilities and the production and quality of Nevermind.
Yeah.
It's sort of like this is what In Utero should be, and sort of like what people would expect it to be. It just sort of is like the logical next step for them. I think it's a great example of that whole soft, loud thing, like Darren alluded to and everything. It's a great track for patricians only.
It's also a very interesting look at, there are just a couple Nirvana songs that give you a look at like writing without power chords, the idea that there's like this high note that's kind of like following through the whole song, very unique in the discography, and does seem to kind of point toward, there are other songs that we'll talk about, but kind of moving away from power chords a little bit is very interesting, right, Darren?
Yeah, and like the strumming during the verse is a bit like, funkier, like a little bit dancey kind of, actually, which is just something that you don't really hear anywhere else. But what I think really makes this song is Steve Albini's production. You know what I mean? Like, I could not imagine this as like a Nevermind track, you know what I mean? I just think it would be terrible. Yeah. But man, it really, like, it's so full, and like the guitars are just like, thick and like so
raw. Yeah.
Yes, it's just so well captured.
All right, what is your number 5, Darren?
Number 5 for me is also from In Utero. It is Serve the Servants.
Okay, that's on my list. A little bit later, I'll save the number, but why'd you pick it?
It's just an incredible like start to In Utero, you know what I mean, to the record that follows up Nevermind with a track that, the first lyrics that are out of Kurt's mouth, are like teenage angst has paid off well, basically commenting on like, thanks for all that Smells Like Teen Spirit money. It's been great. And it just, and the first chord that is played is just so like,
I know,
I don't even know what chord it is, but it's a perfect introduction to what you're about to hear, which is to me one of the greatest rock albums of all time. I love like the lyrics, I love the guitar solo in this track. I mean, honestly, I specifically kept Teen Spirit on this record to just say like that Serve the Servants is a better song. Head to head, I think it's a better song. Better solo, better pretty much everything. But
I also, I think it's just the perfect opener to this record, like you said. And this is one of those things where, he's kind of like lashing out at critics, the press, who's been like really cruel and misogynistic to Courtney Love, kind of like rejecting this voice of a generation thing, taking, pot shots at his dad. But again, it all feels like it's ending up kind of pointing at him a little bit. And it kind of announces the project of this album, which is like going to be kind of a self-destructive one. And to me, like the most amazing thing about this song is that it's the perfect example of what I was talking about earlier, where it's like mocking the song itself. That guitar line, like da na 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 na, it sounds like a joke, like if you're gonna make fun of pop music, right? And the whole thing is like sarcastic, and just the way that like the sort of chorus ends, like not on the right chord, but like on that chord you mentioned that's just completely off and wrong. Like it's got that same drunken feel that I've mentioned a couple times on In Utero, where everything's like kind of bending, warping out of tune, like sounds like it's about to fall apart. Albini's production is amazing, the drums especially. But like it's actively hostile to it's sarcastic about even making a follow-up to his Voice of a Generation record. I don't suppose this made your list, Dan?
No, it didn't. I like it. But it's sort of a throwaway track to me. I don't think this ever made the playlist. I do love that first line, the teenage angst has paid off well. Now I'm bored and old. I've always loved that. It's great. Again, there are basically no bad Nirvana songs.
It's true.
But yeah, it could make the cut.
Yeah. All right, so my number 5 is In Bloom. Did this make either of your lists?
It did not.
Too sick of it, huh?
Yeah, I'm
working at the radio.
Yeah, basically. I think we play this song the most, honestly.
to me, this is the like single from Nevermind that has aged the best, in my opinion. You know, it really feels like it just feels like Nirvana in world beater mode. Like if In Utero is them self-destructing or sabotaging their own success, this has the sound of a band like aiming for like world domination almost. It's like huge, it's big, it's like it's a very sweet, like kind of bright pop song almost with these bright harmonies, and yet it's got this like explosion of energy. You know, the video is the perfect
I love the video
encapsulation of this, like with this kind of fun, like, 60s 50s band, and then like just switching to thrashing and destroying their instruments. It plays that dynamic so well, and that's like kind of both sides that make Nirvana great, I think. I also think that it's like something we haven't really touched on. We kind of did Serve the Servants, you mentioned, Darren, but Nirvana is almost king of the anti-solo. Like, it's supposed to be a big guitar solo, but instead it's just like fucked up beyond recognition. It's like just feedback and destroyed. And like In Bloom basically has my favorite one of those. Serve the Servants has another great one. And have you ever listened, Darren, to the the 2013 mix? Steve Albini did a remix for the In Utero Deluxe edition. And for Serve the Servants, he uses like a different take of the guitar solo. And It is so fucked up. It is like more fucked up than like any Pixies guitar solo. It is nuts. It is so worth hearing.
I'm gonna have to listen to that.
Yeah, but I just one thing I wanted to ask you guys is kind of like, and maybe this is something we could just kind of return to naturally, but it's like, to me, what makes a song so interesting is like I said, they're kind of like going for it, whereas in just 2 years they'll be wishing they could take it all back. And do you feel like this sort of, it feels like the career arc of Nirvana, their story, their mythology is so important to these songs? Like, they're just not the same without them. I don't even know if I would like In Bloom as much if I didn't know like where it stood. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, I get you. Yeah, they're one of those bands, and we've talked about this on the podcast a lot of times. A lot of bands, a lot of albums, the backstory is sometimes like what really sells it. And Nirvana is one of those bands, and I think it's because one, it's interesting, and two, like they are sort of like that first band you get like obsessed with as a kid or as a teen, and so you want to dig into it, and then it's the perfect band to do it. So yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and I mean, and I totally agree. And their story is only like a few years long.
Yeah,
really,
exactly.
Right, and but contained within those few years is just so much. Like it's just so rich with fascinating stories, and just like you want to know everything there is to know about Kurt. That's why his freaking journals were published, and people are like reading all of his personal thoughts.
I know,
because you just got to know.
And even like
it's like,
and even I've listened to Nirvana for 20 years now, and I still learn new things. I didn't know that this song is like about Dylan Carlson from Earth. Like he's the one who likes to shoot his guns and stuff, which is great. Another band I found from Nirvana that I now love. Yeah,
I mean, I think that it's something I'll be able to return to here, but it's like a Shakespearean play or something, like his rise and fall. I mean, it's like Greek tragedy or something. It's just stunning. Yeah. All right, what is your number 4, Dan?
Yeah, my number 4 is one we already talked about from Nevermind, Breed. What number was that for you, Darren?
That was number 7.
Okay, yeah. So
7 for me. Yeah.
I already talked about it.
High honors.
Breed.
All right, what is your number 4, Darren?
Number 4 is Where Did You Sleep Last Night?
Okay, that's on my list a little bit later. Is that on your list, Dan?
It's on my list a little bit later.
Mm-hmm. I had a feeling that was the one you were talking about when you shouted out Unplugged. All right,
so
how come?
I want to take a moment to talk about two things, like Nirvana's ability to cover songs, which you kind of got into, and then Kurt's voice, right? Because, I mean, say what you will, and probably enough has been said, Kurt Cobain's voice is one of a kind. All the people who came after, who tried to emulate him, never even got close. Take a listen to all of Unplugged, take a listen to any of the live tracks. Like, his voice is just unbelievable. Like it's incredible. You would think, it's just this kind of raspy, like deep voice, but there's just something else. Like, and I just wonder if he even realized just what kind of gift he had. You know what I mean? Where Did You Sleep Last Night, I feel like, is a perfect example, coming at the end of, an incredible acoustic set.
I mean, would you say it's his finest vocal performance? Because I kind of feel that way.
I would totally agree. And of course, you're thinking of the same thing I'm thinking of, is that shrill at the very end of the track. I mean, it's incredible. The very last lines of, the entire set that they just did, all, like I mentioned, one take, just incredible, right?
Yeah,
and,
and that breath he takes, like, before he finishes.
It's just stunning. And again, another example of taking a song, you can go and listen to Lead Belly's version or whatever, or dozens of other versions, and he owns it. Like, this is Kurt Cobain's song. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's something so interesting, because when I was thinking about this mythology, this Nirvana mythology that I fell in love with, and which really got me into a lot of bands, we've talked about this many times, but you get into this like whole story, and Kurt is really kind of aware of the mythologizing a little bit. Like he, just the fact that he's willing to, well, quite frankly, kill himself, because his music is his art is gonna suffer. Like, there's just something so real about that, but it's not bullshit. I really believe that. Like, Jim Morrison is bullshit. His mythology is, it's kind of fake. Like, you love it when you're a kid, and then later you're like, he's actually an asshole, but the music's still good. But like, this is so real. You could not fake this performance. Where Did You Sleep Last Night? No matter what, you could never do it. And it's just like this authenticity that he has. He, like we talked about, it feels like he's giving this vocal performance everything he has. And I can't even guess at, oh, well, he, people like to say, oh, he was feeling suicidal, and like, this is part of that. Like, he just feels so in the moment, and it adds a lot of extra weight to it, to know that this is like the last, kind of record of their career in a way. And yet it just feels like he was going to give everything he had to this small room of people. You know what I mean, Dan? Yeah.
I mean, this song is fantastic. I have it in my notes right here. Kurt's best vocal performance, like, by far. I mean, this is not only is it a cover song that, like, he's completely made his own. It's a folk song from the 1870s. It's not it's not like those Meat Puppet tracks are fantastic, but they're pretty similar to the way the Meat Puppets play it. And this is just like this basically becomes a Nirvana song after this performance.
Yes.
It's just like absolutely fantastic. It's
which is nuts, because it's like a song that's been covered hundreds.
I mean, everybody, like, Kurt says it's by Lead Belly and stuff, but it's not. It's a folk song. Just Lead Belly's is sort of the most famous, but I think Lead Belly's maybe is the most famous because people know it from Nirvana. I don't even know.
From Kurt.
I don't know if, like, before Unplugged, if Lead Belly's was the most famous or not. But I mean, this is another thing too. I fell in love with Lead Belly later in my life, basically because of Nirvana. Just another thing. That whole performance is fantastic. I love the little, like, story he tells before it. About how somebody's trying to sell him Lead Belly's guitar, and he wants David Geffen to pay for it. It's like right before this, just like amazing, really, like, sort of melancholy performance. You get this, like, really silly kind of story, which is, like, so much of what Nirvana is. We talked about it with, like, Sliver and everything. There's, like, the silliness to Nirvana that gets completely...
He's very, like, warm and funny and friendly in between the most harrowing live album ever made.
And I think people, like, forget that about Nirvana. And I know, like, the little story maybe doesn't count as part of the song, but I think it does. I think it just, like, shows that there's more than one or two dimensions to Kurt. That'll be true. On my list later.
Well, that's I mean, that is, like, again, it's just so much added weight because it feels like his final statement. And continuing the topic of songs where autobiography is important, my number 4 is You're Right. Did that make either of your lists?
That is my number 3.
Wow.
Wow.
Didn't make your list, Aaron?
It's not on my list, actually. I'm very surprised that you guys chose that. I had definitely had it around on my playlist, but it didn't make it.
I mean, so on one hand, it's a great song because it's just so raw. It's kind of like turning Milk It into a fully fledged song. You know, it's like feedback and just, I mean, the feedback is the hook, amazingly. You know, it's just these screeching feedback with him, like, you know, yelling pain over the top. But and I do want to shout out, like, again, the arrangement is not to be underestimated because it's not just the noise and the feedback and the screaming. It's like the drum hits on this song are, again, just like fantastic. That, like, you know, and then the like toms and everything with the bass. I mean, it's just like so dark and deep. And yet, to me, the thing that I can never escape the autobiographical kind of reading of this song, because it was literally Kurt screaming from the dead. You know, nobody heard it until 2002, right? After a long legal fight. And it finally comes out. And I had already started to get into Nirvana at this time. I'll say that they were basically like one of the bands I had downloaded in my sketchy MP3 folder. You know, it wasn't like Obsession yet. But, you know, hearing this, I knew that he had died and everything. And like, I'm like, this is a dead man, like, screaming, you know, the word pain through my TV. It's just like, you get what I'm saying? Like, that's almost the best part of the song, the haunting nature of Kurt coming back for one more, like, just scream for help. And then the way the song kind of marches off, the feedback is just going, the like pain is just going, and the drums are just kind of marching out while everything disappears. And it just feels like he's got, you know, there he goes back to, you know, back to wherever he came from. And that's the last new Nirvana song we'll ever hear, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when this track came out in 2004. It was, the 10th anniversary of Kurt's death?
Well, actually, I think it was included on the 2002 Best Of box.
Oh, yeah, it came out the same
right,
time
right.
as the journals.
Gotcha. Well, so 2002. I remember when this song came out because I remember the video they put together. And I love this song. I just always felt like it's kind of like what could have been. You know what I mean? Like, would have loved to have seen what else was in there in his mind at the time. I mean, This is like 1994, which is just unreal to be listening to a song by Nirvana in 1994. But it's really, it was a stunning track to like, and it felt so cool to us, I think, because, you know, it was like a new Nirvana track while we were like Nirvana fans and stuff. Yeah. So
this is my number 3, and I picked it for a lot of the same reasons you did, Gabe. It was this weird, like, not only is it like this weird sort of, you know, from the grave kind of Nirvana song, but it like sounds like that. You know, this is a doom and gloom kind of track, and you know, it's that like the only real like sort of glimpse into like what could have been LP4 for Nirvana.
Right.
It's just, that, I mean, the biographical aspect of it is like so important, but it's just also like a great song. I think Kurt's vocals here are fantastic. And, you know, like Darren said, by 2002, I was a big fan of Nirvana. I went and bought the journals the day they came out. I bought this greatest hits, even though I already had every song except this one. You know, I bought it just for the one song, and I it was like being alive, like or being old enough to care when Nevermind came out or something, you know. Right. I remember when this came out, I remember I was in Spanish class, and there was this kid that sat next to me, and he knew I liked music and stuff. He's like, he had heard the song. He's like, "Hey man, have you heard of this band Nirvana? They like, their song just came out. It's like great." And I was like,
right.
I hate to break it to you, man, but he's been dead for a while, you know.
I had the same experience actually, where my friend, somebody you guys will know, was like, "I love Nirvana. You know, I got this greatest hits," and he's like listening to it all the time, and he's like, "Why did they break up?" And I'm like, "Well, I got some bad news for you." And he was depressed, you know, the whole day. It was like just like in '94, how teenagers must have felt. But yeah, I mean, what a song. And I also wanted to mention, you know, kind of building on what you guys were saying, is that in my life, right? So I'm sort of becoming musically conscious around this time, like I mentioned, and amazingly, I didn't really appreciate how incredible this is at the time, but we were still in the post Nirvana era. Like post grunge was the biggest sound.
Oh yeah,
and you had all these bands like whatever, like Stained and
Puddle of Mud,
and like Nickelback and stuff. I mean, it's just like Nirvana again and again, but it's totally corporatized Nirvana and Seether. I love. Oh yeah, I love thinking about like the contrast between like Where Did You Sleep Last Night, the like pure authenticity there, and the corporatization of that authenticity in something like Stained. And that was the thing. And then I just love that Nirvana kind of comes back and just scorches the earth. I mean, even then, I just felt like this is better than anything on MTV that I've ever heard, and I just love that they kind of come back and they're like, fuck you, Nickelback. Maybe that's a weird way to read it, but okay. That was your number 3, Dan. What is your number 3, Darren?
Number 3 for me is Heart-Shaped Box.
Okay, all right.
I know you talked about that a little bit, but I did want to add a little bit to that. This is just it's such an incredible like poem, for me. Like you talk about like Kurt's lyrics, and like at this, age that I'm at now, I don't necessarily like am looking for, deep meanings or whatever from Kurt's lyrics anymore. But it's just such a wild track, like lyrically. And I mentioned like the chorus, and like you talked about how it all kind of just sounds like out of tune and stuff. And like there's like the overdubbed guitars that kind of like play very subtly, you know what I mean? And I think that one of my favorite things about a track like this is like Kurt's, again, ability to just add little bits. Like Nirvana's not really known for tons of overdubs and
right.
studio magic, but I think Kurt, and then like the way they added that guitarist to the In Utero tour and
Pat
stuff,
Smear.
I think he just kind of, yeah, thank you. And I think that he just sort of knew, Kurt is a great songwriter. He really is. You know what I mean? Like it's incredible to think that like from like 1989 to 91, like his songwriting style changed, and then to change again so significantly by 93 with In Utero. And I think Heart-Shaped Box like really represents that. I mean, I know it is like the soft loud type of dynamic that's going on, but I mean, this song, if they weren't Nirvana, like this no one would be hearing something like this. And then, it's just, it's incredible.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to shout out is I'm sure you've listened to the original Steve Albini 1993 mix of this song, because this and All Apologies were replaced by Scott Litt remixes or something like that. But I think Kurt it was who said that the original guitar solo of the original Heart-Shaped Box, which is really bizarre and worth listening to, just like Serve the Servants, he described it as sounding like an abortion hitting the floor, which I really can't agree with, but it is fucking weird. So I would recommend you get that set and check that out. Okay, so we're on to my number 3, which is Serve the Servants, which we talked about. Ooh. That brings us to your number 2, Dan.
Yeah, my number 2, and I'm sure we'll all be in agreement here. I put Negative Creep. From Bleach.
Oh my god,
he did it!
I know.
Might as well
actually did it.
A fucking Motorhead song at number 2.
It's not a Motorhead song. No, I think that I absolutely love Bleach. I love early Nirvana, and I think that this is like the best that early Nirvana is. It's got that like. This is the best grunge song. I think a lot of people that don't know music and all kind of think like Nirvana invented grunge, but really they're a part of this like grunge scene that's already formed and going on in Seattle. But their songs, like even in the moment, like sort of stood a head above the rest of all that stuff. And Negative Creep is one of those songs. It's just, I mean, it's a killer like punk rock song. It's just the repetition. I love the way the guitar and everything like does that start stop kind of thing throughout. Like this just, I think this is like a peek into like Nirvana being so much better than these bands that they're surrounded by. And while this isn't gonna be a radio hit or anything, I think it like sort of shows that they have potential to be something that people outside of just music fans will enjoy. just an absolute killer track, and you should all be ashamed.
I gotta say, it's like it might be my least favorite song on Bleach.
Really?
And
Wow.
Over Floyd the Barber? Come on.
yeah, I like that more, honestly.
God.
I'll go ahead and clarify what I was alluding to earlier, which is no Bleach songs made my list.
God.
Because I think the vibe of the record is really cool, and I gotta say, like, it's aged in a really cool way, because it sounds like it's got this like cool kind of late 80s like underground rock thing, and it just like sounds very, very fresh to me in a way that I wonder if in a couple of years, I cannot believe that this would happen, but in 2 more years will Nevermind sound that fresh?
No, and I completely agree with you.
He says definitively.
No, it won't, because the reason like Nevermind won't is because Nevermind's production sounds like it's time. Bleach like doesn't have any of those problems. That's why I think I love all 3 of the Nirvana records, but I think Bleach really has aged the best, because it doesn't sound like it came out in 1989. If this record could have been released today, like production wise, I mean, like it doesn't sound of its time necessarily. And I think that that's the way to like, make a record that like truly sounds timeless. Like a big problem, we all love Prince, but some of those albums, when those records were made, and there's flaws in them, like because of the time it was made. That they're so thin and everything. Like this record doesn't suffer from anything like that. It's timeless, and
it's a very unique.
And maybe part of it is
and
maybe part of it's that like these songs haven't been played to death forever, but I think
I just don't like the drums that much.
Me neither. I don't think this dude can drum.
Just fucking
like he really you can hear him not being able to keep up with the song. You know what I mean? Like he actually can't, like on School or something, like he can't do the double bass very well.
Man.
But okay, we're running low on time here, and the listeners do not want to hear us spend all this time talking about Bleach. Let me tell you. Okay, number 2 we're on.
Number 2.
Darren, what is your number 2?
Number 2 is Drain You from Nevermind.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
Is it really that
deflated me a little bit?
Well,
didn't make my list.
Didn't make your list, huh? This is a personal favorite, but also, and I hate to sort of, agree so closely with the Vulture article, but I think that this is one of the best written tracks that Kurt ever did. I think that the verse, the chorus, that prolonged bridge or breakdown, I guess you'd call it.
Can I ask you, like, my one problem with the song, which I really like, I just don't understand what the bridge is for. It feels like a bad example of what I was talking about earlier, where he's just like, what should we do instead of a solo? And it's like, and
it doesn't really amount to anything.
I don't know what that is.
I agree with the record version, and I had mentioned to you guys I was gonna have you watch a video. It was a performance that they did on like French TV of Drain You.
Okay.
And it's something they actually also did at the Live and Loud in Utero tour show. But Kurt, like on the TV show, his guitar like cuts out during the breakdown, so he just drops his guitar, like he's like messing with it. He drops it and he grabs the mic, which is like you never see Kurt just standing there solo with a microphone, and screams like right at the end of the bridge, and it's adds a whole new dynamic, I feel like, to that song. It's just like a shrill, just a scream, and he does it again on the In Utero tour, and I feel like every time I hear this song on Nevermind or any of the shows before that, it just never hits as hard. You know what I mean? Like it's just missing something, and I think that's kind of what you're alluding to, where it sort of amounts to nothing really. But it's a build up. Yeah. It's a build up when done, I think, properly, and ending in like a Cobain scream, I think is one of my favorite parts.
Yeah, I think that's just my one hang up. I think it's like such a catchy and really like a uncharacteristically bright song. I understand why people love it, and we'll kind of get to this, but it came in at number 1 on that Vulture list we're going to discuss.
Mm-hmm. Very surprising.
Yeah, any thoughts on this song, Dan, or should we keep it moving?
It didn't make my list, obviously, and I mean, it's a good song. I think it's like sort of one of the, if I had to cut one song from Never mind.
Okay, all right. Just because I said something about the drums on Bleach, really?
No.
Yeah, this is payback.
No, I mean, if I had to cut a song from Nevermind, it'd probably either be this, or maybe On a Plane. I that Vulture article, which we're going to talk about, it surprised me that this was number one. I don't really have much to say about it. It's sort of like just one of those sort of throwaway things. I agree that bridge is like sort of pointless in the song.
Yeah, feels to me like another, you don't want to be a Chad, but you like the sound of
a little bit, yeah.
So my number 2, we already talked about, is Where Did You Sleep Last Night? And at this point, I'm starting to think we might all have the same number 1.
Well, we don't have the same number 1 because I haven't talked about Where Do We Sleep Last Night yet. And I thought we were gonna align. I was looking forward to it.
Wow, very close. Did you have more to say about that, or did you speak your piece?
No, I basically said it takes the wind out of your sails a little bit when your number 1 gets spoiled. But but yeah, I mean, this is just there's few bands that like a cover song could be what I think is the best example of that band. But here, I mean, yeah. I think just covers are so important in the Nirvana world, and this is definitely the best one. And it's just, I mean, I don't want to repeat myself too much, but I mean, Kurt makes this his song, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah. Well, my number 1, actually, Darren, if you don't say the song that I have, I'm gonna lose my shit. What is your number 1?
My number 1 is All Apologies.
Thank God. All right. This is the objective best Nirvana song. Why is that, Darren?
Well, first off, I'm very upset at its placement on that Vulture article, which I guess we will get to, but I could not believe. Egregious.
Right.
And, I just think that this song, and it's incredible because I love the studio, I love the unplugged version, and I even love, the live version at that Live and Loud show. It's just, all three of them are just slightly different, right?
Yeah.
It's the song that, like, I think being like a musician, like, I wanted to write. Like, I desperately wanted to write this song or write something like it because it seems so simple, but yet it carries such an incredible weight to it. Of course, when you talk about the unplugged performance, of course, when you talk about what Kurt does in 1994, like, it's such a heavy, incredible song. It has so many, like, stunning moments, lyrically, vocally, the way he's, like, yelling,
yes.
Married, buried. Oh my gosh. And, like, what's really incredible, and I kind of wanted to mention this, is there's a demo version on the In Utero Super Deluxe, and you hear Kurt, like, throws, like, an extra guitar over the track, so it kind of, like, muddies the regular jingle that you're used to hearing. But it's just really cool because it just shows you, like, his songwriting ability and, like, his ability to, like, try something out, hear it, and then make the right choice. And I feel that way about, like, a lot of the Beatles B-sides, when you listen to those, like, outtakes and demos, man, like, you can hear the song, it's almost there, but it takes, like, a master songwriter to realize what is missing and make it and perfect it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I just think that, it's kind of like so this is another example of what I was alluding to earlier with Very Ape, where it's like him beginning to write beyond power chords, and it's such an amazing, like, the way that the verse is played is such an inventive way to use a guitar. I mean, I just really feel like Kurt had so much more in him. Even, You're Right is, like, kind of leaving power chords behind and, like, just using harmonics for the verse.
He knew.
And stuff.
He was totally aware. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
of, like, the need to kind of move on.
Yeah, and from what we can tell, doing an amazing job at it. And just the idea that it's like the song on it kind of, like, combines everything that's great about In Utero, because it's got, like, the gorgeous cello, that like pops up on Dumb, for example. It's got, like, the bendy kind of, like, slightly drunk feeling, like wobbling, about to fall apart guitars and everything that I've talked about so much. The Albini drums, the drums on this song are so fantastic. Dave Grohl's fills. It's, like, all here, and it's also got, like, a lot of noisiness and a lot of just wild crunch. I mean, that whole part where, of course, the like all in all is all we are part. I mean, things start feeding back, and they feed back to the point where like it's not even feedback anymore. It just sounds like an amp like dying, and
Right.
the way the whole thing kind of falls apart. There's even like some discordant cello like layered in there, which is a really non-Nirvana move to, like bring in that kind of layering and stuff. And yet it's like this really gorgeous song. A lot of the songs on In Utero are like, and actually a lot of Nirvana songs, Unplugged shows this, are like really beautiful, perfect pop songs, like on the level of Lennon McCartney or something. Right. And yet this is like the perfect example of it's just like buried in sludge, and yet you can really hear underneath all that noise and distortion, just like one of the most gorgeous songs ever written. I just can't believe it didn't even make your top 10, Dan?
I mean, it definitely made the playlist, and it made it a few rounds. It got close. I mean, this is inarguably a fantastic song. A lot of the things you said, like the feedback, the discordance and all, like that's kind of like nuts that stuff is on a pop song that's fairly popular and played on the radio and everything. And it's a great track. I think it's some of like Kurt's like best lyrics and everything.
Yes.
It just, I think it suffers a little bit from overexposure with me. I've just maybe heard it one too many times to really make the list. But I'm not going to argue against either of you or anyone else, for putting it on the list. It in a different mood, it might make my list.
Yeah, I just feel that the best Nirvana songs, like Kurt at his very best, we've been talking about it a lot, but it's like he's just a guy at war with himself, and that manifests itself in his music a lot of times, where it's like he kind of wants to be famous and take over the world and change the musical landscape, and yet he really wants to destroy and self-sabotage and retreat from that fame. He like, this song is noisy, but it's very beautiful. It's like you feel like he's almost ashamed of how beautiful it is, and he wants to kind of bury it in sludge. And, yet that just provides this like amazing look into just his mind. I mean, it's just, I don't know. That's probably the main reason I love it so much, and why I love In Utero so much.
Yeah, and this song has just grown with me. Like I loved it back then, but now, I'm an adult. I have kids. Like one of my favorite lines from the track is, I wish I was like you, easily amused. And to me, it just seems like Kurt was he's so aware of like his own thoughts and his ability to articulate that emotion of like looking at a child and seeing how much they, just don't know about the world, but yet everything is, amusing to them, and they can find enjoyment in everything. And he, as a person who probably clearly was struggling with finding that same sort of enjoyment, so much to the point where like he was willing to kill himself, you know what I mean?
Right.
It makes the song like so much more painful and just gorgeous in general, like you mentioned.
Yeah, and the weight of how this just feels like some kind of goodbye or something.
Yeah,
I mean, my God. But all right, we are going a little bit over already. We got a little bit more to get to. I don't know if we need to touch on a ton of notable exceptions, because we really had much different lists than I was expecting. But I think Andy Beta's top 10, again, on vulture.com, would be a good way to maybe, recall some of these notable exceptions and see if we should touch on them a little bit. Darren, could you read Andy Beta's top 10 Nirvana songs?
I will. Coming in at number 10 was Smells Like Teen Spirit from Nevermind. Number 9 was Dive, a B-side from 1990. Number 8 was About a Girl from Bleach. There you go, Dan. Yeah. Number 7 was In Bloom from Nevermind. Number 6, School from Bleach. Number 5, Where Did You Sleep Last Night from Unplugged. Number 4, Sliver, the single from 1990. Number 3, Heart-Shaped Box from In Utero. Number 2, Aneurysm, the B-side from 1991. And coming in at number 1, Drain You from Nevermind.
So, any reactions to this? Any other songs that you just feel very guilty that you couldn't make on the list?
No, I think it's like kind of funny that we while not in the same order as Beta, but like we really do sort of have a similar selection of tracks. That surprised me.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's two things. I really wanted to include "School." I really love that song. I think
do too,
it
yeah.
really works well live.
If
too.
it had a better drummer on it, I think it'd be
God.
Gabe, I'm surprised that "Dive" didn't make your list. I always thought that was one of your favorite songs.
I love it. I really, really, really love it, and it was really close to making it, but. I have a hard time justifying putting stuff from like Bleach and Incesticide like on this list, and when there's so many good songs to choose from, and like I kind of said earlier, it's sort of a weird task we set for ourselves because what makes Nirvana so great are these like weird little gems and stuff, and Dive would be like among the very best of those like kind of hidden gem songs in their catalog, in my opinion.
I agree. Maybe one day we'll do a top 10 B-side list.
Yeah. I can't believe About a Girl didn't make anybody's list.
Yeah, I mean, that is like a fantastic song. I think it's a little out of place on Bleach, it's like the slow love song. And like Kurt said he was basically trying to rip off the Beatles when he wrote it and stuff. I think it fits like way, way better on Unplugged.
Sure,
but yeah, it's a great song. Dive almost made my list. That was another one that it made it a couple times. I took it off. That's a fantastic song. I wish that was on Bleach. Like I think that would be like a really good Bleach track.
That's true. That is really
I think you're
true.
right about that, actually. I had Penny Royalty on my list like early on. Really loved that track from In Utero, but just couldn't really keep it on there.
Yeah, I had a couple things that like just barely missed. I'll say Blue from Bleach
I had that too.
A really great song. It's like, I'm not just trying to fuck with you, Dan, but it's like the one song where the drumming doesn't ruin it, because it's kind of like like the song needs like that kind of charming like 80s style like amateurish drumming, but it's really interesting and unique the way that like the lead guitar like matches his vocals. It's kind of like a unique thing in their catalog. I had Scentless Apprentice on my list for a long time. I decided that Milk It was a better representation of that complete like fuck you to my fans, but just the idea that he's screaming get away, like to his fans who have bought his new record. And honestly, I put it on and I was like, this is a lot fucking harsher and crazier than I even remember. Like, this is like a kind of thing where if I had like the radio on and somebody like was walking by the street, I would like turn it down so that they wouldn't think I was like a freak.
I feel really that so much.
Goddamn song.
It definitely is. It definitely is.
I also really close, probably like the closest like weird outtake song was Sappy.
I had that. I had that. Yeah, I had that
on.
Early on as well. It's weird because that's one of those songs like it was originally called Verse Chorus Verse, and like Kurt tried that song was recorded for I think almost every like Nirvana thing. In Utero was almost called Verse Chorus Verse. That was the second name. First it was I Hate Myself and I Want to Die. And then verse, chorus, verse, and then ultimately In Utero. Yeah, it's like it's weird that like he tried so hard with the song, and then it just ends up it's like thrown on. It's like a bonus track on like some compilation for like a magazine or something. It's like weird that he like put so much effort into it, and then I guess was so dissatisfied with it. So I sort of took that into account and thought a little bit like if he didn't like it, maybe it didn't deserve it, but it was close to making it on the list.
Yeah, close for you too, Darren.
Yeah, it was. I that was one of the tracks that coming back to it, I was like, oh my god, this song is incredible, and it was on my list for a long time. But I just, kind of like what you were mentioning, it was hard to justify like a B-side, being on that list, and I had Aneurysm, so I kind of went with that instead. But I mean, this was like number 12 for me, basically.
Yeah. I just remember like a DVD that came with the Lights Out box set. They're like playing this song, and Kurt just straight up falls over before the solo happens, because it goes like dun, 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 and he just hits the ground like completely, and I just like that image is seared into my brain forever.
I remember being kids and like us watching that DVD and then moving the coffee table at your mom's house so you could practice trying to fall flat on your face.
Yeah, and I did it at a couple of concerts actually that we played in our high school band. Never as cool as Kurt though. Okay, so that's some exceptions. There's honestly so many. We're running overtime. I kind of wanted to ask like how. What's your takeaways from this experience this week? Just to wrap up, like, did you find yourself kind of remembering why you don't listen to Nirvana that much anymore? Or did you kind of feel reinvigorated? Like, hey, this is better than I thought. I remember being in love in high school with this music, or how did it go?
It was like a fun trip down memory lane. I think, I'm not going to keep listening to them. It's still like, I think having to listen to all the records like many times, it sort of was like really grinding that I know these records inside and out like so well that there's like really nothing left to discover. I still love them. I would say I love them, but yeah, I don't really feel a need to keep listening. But I had a hard time like making this list, mostly because there's no bad Nirvana songs, like a lot of, in a normal band, if I was doing this, I think I would instantly know what number one is. When I really sort of like grappled and moved things around, making this list, which I think like really is a testament to them that this was so hard to pick what 10 songs.
Yeah, my first like go through, I was really like recklessly adding things. I was like, Pen Cap Chew is a fucking awesome song.
Exactly.
That's on the maybe list. Like Opinion. I don't care if it's like barely.
I fucking love Opinion.
It's like halfway. Old Age. I love. I was just like adding everything. If You Must, and then I'm like,
oh yeah.
And then I like take a look and I'm like, all right, there's just no real way that those songs are gonna make it. But that was kind of like my takeaway is that I feel like some of these songs are just over listened to for me beyond repair. Like I can still kind of appreciate them from afar, but I kind of forgot how rich and deep like their gems are, their extended catalog is. And while I think I'm going to put away like Nevermind and In Utero and everything, I might spend the next couple of days like continuing to jam some of those songs. What was your main takeaway, Darren?
Yeah, I mean, like you guys, it was a trip down memory lane. I think pretty quick once I got past the studio records, I started to really enjoy myself. Going back through those B-sides that I really had not listened to for a very long time. I mean, I had like Outcesticide like way back in the day, and that was my experience. But
did Do Re Mi almost make your list?
No, not quite. Though I do love that song.
Great song.
I really had a great time listening to Live at Paramount and then that Live and Loud show. I just hadn't heard those when they were released. So just like listening to those and just the energy, the sheer energy, and like it just made me wish so badly that I could have seen them in concert in some way.
Yes.
Like, I just feel like it would have been an incredible show. But it's sort of like, I think at one point I probably would have said Nevermind and In Utero were my favorite albums, like kind of going back and forth, but it sort of made me realize that In Utero definitively is my favorite Nirvana album, kind of by and large. And I probably won't be listening to the studio records, but I'll throw on Unplugged. I'll go through those B-sides for the next like week or so for sure, because they're just it was really fun like coming back to all that. And Nirvana's a great band. So
well said.
All right, well, I think that's enough for this week. So what do you think? We'd love to read your thoughts on the air. You can email us popshieldpod@gmail.com. We got our next episode in 2 weeks. Not sure what we're doing yet. Maybe why Chad Channing's better than Dave Grohl. But if you like the show, help us out by subscribing. Leave us a 5-star rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. And also stay connected, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. I've been uploading the shows on YouTube at PopShieldPod for all of that. And we'll see you next week.
See ya.
So long.